Good morning, this is Light Miser, aka Kimball. So I'm going to tell the story of by far the strangest project I've been involved with, and this may end up being a 2 or 3 parter because it's a long story. Before I get going, my wife happened to see my last video and was asking about the Obey behind me. That's a figurine from I stumbled on at a shop 2 years ago from the movie They Live. Goofy 80s bad sci-fi flick. I happen to have an affinity for those. If you do watch it, just skip the last scene before the credits. Anyway, as I've mentioned before, I grew up in the film industry. My dad did special effects in movies for 35 years. Now, not computer-generated stuff. He actually did explosives, made fire, made snow, made steam, built mechanical props, mechanical effects, handheld props, all that. Yeah, it's a weird way to grow up. And so I'm what's affectionately known as the set brat because I was raised on sets as a kid. Fast forward, ended up from California when I was in high school into Southwest Utah. And I was really big into music in California and ended up switching over and focusing more on theater when I got here because the ability for musical training and career in Southern Utah just wasn't what it was compared to Southern California, obviously. I had mentioned the last video, the hall I used to run when I started there as a stagehand, plus doing college theater and doing high school theater, and then eventually became the tech director for that theater, doing lighting, sound, rigging, running the crews, all that, because it was a rental theater. We didn't build our own shows. We had shows that would come in and rent the facility. A long run show for me was 4 days. Usually it was one night hits. Just a lot of those boom, 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 boom. So in back in the late 80s, early 90s, my dad got hired to be a special effects designer for a company that built theme parks. He wanted to take a couple years not being on the road with, most of the movies he worked on would be on locations for a couple months, and he wanted to be home for a bit. This company ended up building and designing and building a couple of theme parks that went to Japan, a couple that went down to Mexico. Back in the day, they built the Ghostbusters show that played at Universal Studios Orlando. My dad helped design a new kind of ground fogger using liquid nitrogen. A lot of cool technology came out of there. And then after a couple of years, went back into doing movies and TV. And in 97, there was a company out of Saudi Arabia, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, that had this facility that had dining and entertainment called Marsal Village. And they wanted to be able to add a theme park to it. And they had tried once with a previous contractor that didn't know what they were doing and just really built them for a lot of money. And they built some structures I remember seeing a giant cement octopus, and it was very hokey and never came together, never opened. It was going to be a water park. And don't forget to do that good YouTube stuff if you feel so inclined. The thumbs up, the subscribe, and the notification button. Appreciate it. So this was their second attempt at trying to get some type of themed environment going. And they had a good design of the overall park and layout and different attractions. And they had one indoor dark ride they were doing, the Hidden Mine Ride. And they wanted to add special effects to it. So they came to Hollywood looking for effects guys that would take this contract. Now, special effects in movies and special effects in theme parks are really two different animals. Pretty much nobody does both or has done both except for my dad, because you design things totally differently for theme parks than you would for a movie. You're doing a gag once, 5 times, 10 times, not made to last, to take 12 to 14 hours a day and auto reset and keep going. It's a different beast. And the guys in Hollywood knew that, and the only one that they knew had done both was my dad, so everybody kept directing them to my dad. So finally approached my dad with it, and he reviewed the contract on it and was intrigued by it and by the opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia and do something different. And so he came to me, since I was doing theater at the time, and I ended up getting subcontracted from him to design all the lighting effects, design all the sound effects, figure out show control. How's this thing going to operate, trigger the different effects and whatnot during the ride. And they also were hiring another guy that was doing a miniature animatronic. I had to figure out how to interface with that, which then ended up also including a couple of video segments. I had to figure all that out. So we started in '97, started speccing that out, figuring that whole thing out. And because of his previous experience in the theme park industry, at that time he said, don't even think about normal show controllers. It's going to be beyond our budgets. They'll start at tens of thousands of dollars. See if you can figure out another way to do it. I wish I had not listened to that, because I didn't know that another company had come up since that made much more cost-effective show controllers. They actually had a bunch of guys that had been hired directly by Disney when they built Disney World and designed custom controller for those guys, went on their own and eventually created automation controllers for theme parks that are really well priced. Anyway, I'll end up circling back to that. That's the reason why I bring that up. So because of the training that I'd received from my defunct lighting shop, I realized that the controller that I'd gotten trained on at the corporate would be a great platform to be able to use, because most lighting controllers are just a standalone piece of electronics, standalone controller. They might have an audio input if they'll do automatic lights to beats. They'll have the lighting protocol coming out, and that's really it. But this controller was run off a computer that the board interfaced into. Well, that gives me a lot of options for being able to interface, control in and out. And this, again, this is late 90s, so this is right before USB came out. In fact, USB came out when I was on my way out to Saudi in '99. When I started designing this, USB wasn't a thing yet. We're still using serial and these older protocols. So I began researching and figuring out how I was going to do things. And then in late '98, we started building the big set pieces that were going to go inside this dark ride. Because one section, the ride goes over areas that has waterfalls and then into a faux volcano area. And so we built the volcano out of fiberglass and had a mix for the lava of petroleum jelly and mineral oil. And like we're buying this by the barrel, 55 barrel drums of this stuff. Mix that up and then backlight it underneath with orange and red lights. You've got lava. We'll also have air jets that blow air bubbles through it. Actually read really well, but so we built this whole, and at its height, this was about 10 to 12 foot tall at the volcano on top of it. So we built that in my dad's shop and then cut the whole thing down, loaded it into sea crates with all my lighting and sound gear I was sending out there. Slow boating it out there, and that's why we had to get it done by the end of '98 or beginning of '99. Because then we were actually going to be on site installing, getting this whole thing going the summer of '99. So at this point, I'm working for the college, running my theater. And with the college, I wasn't on 9-month contracts. But the college wanted me to be a salary employee. Legally, they couldn't make me a salary employee, though, because at that time, the law was if you were a salary employee, you spent 70% of your time sitting at a desk and running a theater. Yeah, I'm lucky to be 20% at my desk, constantly setting up lighting, setting up sound, turning stuff, da-da-da-da-da. So they figured out what my salary would be per year and then had me track any of my overtime at time and a half. And then during the summer would pay me to sit on my butt at home to burn off the overtime. That's how they kind of fudged having me work under a faux salary setup. But because of that and the amount of hours that I worked running that theater, even that first full season, I had enough hours accrued to be paid for the whole summer. So came time to go do this project. It just lined up really well that I ended up missing one show that I set up and got one of my number 2 guys to be able to run it. Did a great job running it, and then the theater was shut down for the summer anyway, so that all worked out. I was up front with my boss about it, and we were on good terms there. Now, originally when we were going to go out there, the idea would be that we would come in, be there for 3 weeks, put in our gags, get it fine-tuned, and get out. My dad went out there the week before we got there, and they were just putting the roof on the building. They literally got AC running in the building 2 days before we got there. And this is in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, so during the very peak, 95 degrees, 95% humidity. Thankfully, they had the AC running in there before I got there. So we get there, and we've got a shell of a building. It's got the big brick structures for the pathway the cart's going to go, and where the control room is, and things of that nature. But that's it, nothing. And the company that my dad ended up working with to take the contract was a big special effects shop that's mainly known for renting out gear to effects guys in Hollywood. They were the biggest rental shops out there. And when we'd started designing this whole thing, after we'd gotten the whole thing laid out and designed, and about the time we were starting to build, they ended up having a major shake-up, ownership change-up, operational change-up on it, and the new owners walked in to this contract. Well, we've now built this thing, parts are shipped out. My brother was working on the project with us. He was an architectural designer. He came out with us. So him and I flew from here to LA, went down to the effects shop to check on things, to get with a couple guys that were going with us that we had never met before. So there's 3 guys that went out with us. One guy, his name's Caius, he was doing a bunch of miniatures. So there's an area where the cart is going over, looking down into a village. It's called forced perspective. And there's these miniature tribal guys on this island, having a night around a faux fire, chanting, all that kind of stuff. So he's coming out with us. We got the guy who built the animatronics coming out with us, and the third guy, I can't remember his name. Well, what we didn't know is while we were in the air flying from LA to Saudi Arabia, that this company realized they were going to make pretty much break even on this, weren't going to make any money on it, and decided to drop the project on us. And we don't find any of because this is before cell phones are really prevalent other than rich guys in cars, so we don't find any of this until we get into Saudi Arabia. And as we're coming across, I'm also flying, my brother and I don't drink, but the other 3 guys are drinkers. In fact, Caius, at that time, for fun, did a microbrewery in his garage. And they know we're going into a dry country. So we hit London, we've got a couple hours layover, plus none of us have ever been there before. And this is pre-9/11, and so they'd have this area you could check in your carry-on luggage. And my brother and I had quite a bit from extra stuff my dad had us taking out there. I mean, I got in trouble with their union because of how heavy my bag was, because my dad had me bringing in a ton of 4-way screwdrivers to be able to give out to his day workers at the end of the project. Plus a bunch of these huge manuals for being able to order parts, because again, pre-internet, I mean the internet existed, but not, these shops weren't online, so they still had to have these huge catalog books that each weighed probably 20 pounds. So I ended up checking in, had to take half my stuff out of my big bag and put it into a box to be able to make it so the union guys would touch it, because they wouldn't touch a bag over 50 pounds. The long drawn-out story, sorry. So anyway, we get into London, we check in our carry-on bags, my brother and I, and then we go down, get on the tunnel and go down to Piccadilly Circus, which is where I have to blank this part out here because I forgot my terms. That's where the castle is, and we get there right at the changing of the guard, which is really cool to watch, and found a pub for these guys. My brother and I had some good fish and chips, and these guys were having their last Guinness before going into this dry country. We get back to the airport, and of course, barely make it on time. The other 3 guys go running down, telling them the gates to everybody that we're coming. My brother and I go get our checked-in stuff, and we're running, and it's like a marathon. Everybody going, "Come on, you can make it, you can make it." Literally hop on the plane, close the door, and take off. And then we flew to Dubai, spent a night there. And to this day, I have no idea how long we were in Dubai. This time the time zone changes was so frazzled. I just know I hit the pillow of the hotel we're in, and sometime the next morning get a phone call of my brother telling me to get up. We're going to go look at Dubai before flying out. We get some breakfast, go down to this giant indoor mall, and as we're going there, Dubai has this giant 8-lane highway, 4 lanes each way, and it's right around prayer time, so we're the only two taxis on the entire highway, 8 lanes, only 2 cars. We don't know this is how it's normal there this time of day, and we're in the back taxi, and none of us speak Arabic. The the guys in the taxi in front of us, they knew where they were going, and so they start pulling off the highway, and we noticed that our driver doesn't. So we're starting to point, follow that taxi. Taxi driver comes to a screeching halt in the lane in the highway, puts it in reverse back up to the off ramp, then goes off, and we're like cats in a cage, just losing our minds because we're all from LA. We figured we're gonna die here. He knew nobody was there, and it was totally safe to do. And we go do this giant mall, get back, and on the plane. Finally, we get into Jeddah. The airplane lands at like 10:30 at night. And part of the gear that I had with me was some audio equipment, now outdated technology called mini disc, because that's what our audio segments were recorded on for our ghost voices. I also had a zip drive with video segments that were used for a projection of the ghost, and then the animatronic used a rear projection in the face of it, which at that time was a whole new concept to give them some realism. So I had all the electronic gear, because this is before zip was USB, so I had to have all the weird gear to hook up with that. And to be able to do audio and video editing at that point, now you can just do it on your laptop. At that point, you had to have special hardware that would plug into a PC. So I'd found what was called a lunchbox computer. It's the size of a small desktop computer, well, mid-size now the super slim lines, but it also has a monitor built into it and the keyboard built into it that folds out of it. So that way I could put in the extra peripherals and all that kind of stuff. So I'm an American going to an Arabic country with all these electronics. Yeah, getting through their TSA was really entertaining. And then I've got this habit from all the years of theater when, I get there before sun up and leave long after sundown, of just always saying good morning to people, no matter what time of day it is. To me, morning was a state of mind. So we're going through, and the airport, we finally got through all the security checks, and they've got guards there standing with AK-47s. Other countries, that's very normal. One of their guards says, good evening, and I would just respond, because I had a habit saying good morning, and he starts looking at me really closely in my eyes. See, before we could go into the country, we had to sign contracts with the consulate in LA, because at that point there was no tourism. They've just now in the last year and a half opened up tourism in Saudi Arabia. To be able to go there, you could only go there if you were Muslim going there on pilgrimage to their holy sites, if you were part of a government attaché, or you're invited by a company in Saudi Arabia to come and work, as we were. But we had to sign contracts saying that we would follow Islamic law, and if they found us with any, and the Islamic law means if we steal from somebody, they can cut our hand off, that kind of thing. And then if we are found with religious material, pornographic material, political material, or drug paraphernalia, that they could kill us as part of their law. And so this guy was looking real carefully at my pupils, and I realized I just said the wrong thing, and so I got out of there as quick as I could. Anyway, I think I'll cut it at that. So that's part one. That was getting there, my first flight out, for what was supposed to be a 3-week project. There's definitely more to come on this one. Talk to you later.